So from basketball player to model and brand ambassador of Ralph Lauren for 20 years, now he's the founder and the brand owner of the world of Chris Collins. I have Chris Collins here with me today on the Max Forti Chat, episode 3. Actually, this is episode 3. I almost had to think real quickly. And welcome to the Max Forti Chat, Chris. Thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure, Max. It's always great to speak with you. I know that you are a super fragrance enthusiast, so it's always great talking fragrance with you.
I love fragrances, as so do you, and I've been doing this for quite a little while now. I think as a collector for about 35 years, and as a YouTuber, whatever you want to call it, critic, reviewer, whatever, going almost in a decade doing it, and I love doing it. And I'm glad that you actually joined us at Scent Explorer. It was great to have you. It was such an amazing, and I speak for myself, but I mean, don't let me speak. You tell me, how did you think that experience was? Did you enjoy being there?
It was very well done. I mean, the support you got was incredible. Listen, no matter what you do, whether it's an event or you launch a brand, the second iteration, the second time around is always much better than the first. I changed my packaging. I've upgraded things, and you never know what to actually do until you do it, and then you succeed, you make mistakes, and then you say, well, okay, now next time, this is what we're going to do. So all in all, for your first one, I think it was an overwhelming success. You had so many people coming in, and that just pretty much shows that New York is kind of thirsty for something like that, because there was nothing in New York like that.
I agree. Nothing in the States really like that. I think the two most important things, Chris, and a lot of people say, there's clicks, the New York click, this click, that click. I don't believe in that. I think it's about uniting. I think we're all united by this passion that is fragrance. And I think besides fragrance, just united as people, helping each other and just bringing things together. I think that's the most important thing. The world needs it right now more than ever. We had this coronavirus.
More than ever.
We had situations that I don't even want to talk about it because I want us to stay in the positive, but it's all about bringing, it's about helping each other. And I like to help people rise. It's like the wrestling world. They talk about you being a heel. I'm okay. I can be the heel. I want to bring you up. That's all good for me. So the world of,
well, before you go on, I mean, I know it's a sensitive subject, but I'll be the one to bring it up, because there's a lot of, racial tension going on right now, and there's like huge racial disparities when it comes to even the COVID-19 situation. So now more than ever, we need to be unified toward, a common goal of, of peace and happiness and love. And, listen, if fragrance can be that platform, then let it be that platform. But, I think that, during this very most difficult time, this is exactly what we need.
Absolutely.
That's right.
And the community has to get stronger. We need to give each other, a chance, an opportunity, just help each other shine. I think that's the most important thing. And that's why Scent Explorer came about, giving the limelight to brands that people don't talk about. And because of COVID, most likely Scent Explorer won't happen the way it happened last year. We may have to do something virtual, kind of like this, but I'm definitely working on something in the next few months. So I'll keep you posted if that happens. But today it's all about Chris Collins, the world of Chris Collins. So I want to talk about, first and foremost, tell us a little bit about, going from basketball to becoming a model for 20 plus years, and then, becoming a brand ambassador, coming up with your own brand. What was that like? What was like being a model for, well, first of all, basketball. How far did you get with basketball?
Well, the only common denominator from that all the way from what I'm doing now back then is that I always loved to smell good. That happened when I was a kid, before basketball, before Ralph Lauren, and it continued throughout when I launched my own brand. But I was always an athlete growing up. Basketball ended up being the sport where I excelled most, and I went to college, played D1 ball up north, up in Maine. When I finished college, I took some time off. I was actually pre-med, so I was studying to go in the medical field, studying chemistry, which in turn then helped me in the perfume world as well. And then I met an agent who introduced me to Ralph Lauren. I had never thought that my life would actually go down that path. And then 20 years later, I'm working with Ralph, and that was an incredible experience. And then I just got to a point where, it was time to do something on my own. I mean, working with Ralph was a great education about branding, marketing, and just, luxury and lifestyle, so forth and so on. And then I've always had in the back of my head that I wanted to do something around fragrance. I just didn't know what. Then, and walked into my life Killian, and then that was it. From that point on, it was like, okay, this is your calling. This is what you need to do. I had a blessing from him. And then here I am, my own brand.
The rest is history, as they say.
The rest is history.
So the Chris Collins experience, the world of Chris Collins, there are actually 7 fragrances in totality as of now, correct?
Yep.
The Harlem Renaissance collection and the Dark Romance collection.
Right.
Tell us about your brand, the experience itself. If folks are listening to this podcast and just learning about your fragrance experience, what would you tell that the brand represents, the motto of the brand, the actual collections? Break it down for us if you could.
Well, the brand was created around being niche, high-end, luxurious fragrances. I launched my original collection, the Renaissance collection. I've lived in Harlem almost 20 years. So this is where the idea was actually born. So I wanted to dedicate a collection towards the Harlem Renaissance, the one currently happening now and the one that happened back in the 20s. So I launched my first 3, which is Harlem Nights, Dawn Sauvage, and Renaissance Man. Those are eau de parfum, very, distinct Oriental fragrances. And then my next collection, I wanted to do, I wanted to go even more deep. So I launched the Dark Romance collection, which are a series of extracts de parfum. And, these are like 25%, fragrance oil. And this one basically just tapped into the playful dark side of myself and those who actually wear them. So, I have Sweet Taboo, Tokyo Blue, Oud Galore, and Autumn Rhythm. So, that rounds up the 7 fragrances. All distinct, all well crafted, beautiful raw materials. I've been working on them. It takes me about a year from an idea to actually launching. So, I've been working on those from the year prior to, and they've been getting a great response, really good response.
And you definitely say that in the collection, there's something for everyone, right? From like citrus, aromatic, spices to like oriental, woody, spicy fragrances, the darker stuff. So there's something for everyone.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's always more stories to tell. There's always more, facets to display. But yeah, most of my fragrances are pretty masculine, but I don't say that my fragrances are just for men, because there are women that really love masculine scents. I mean, from experience that, the one note that kind of separates masculine, quote unquote, from feminine fragrances, quote unquote, is the floral note. Right. So I have, a floral note, but I made it musky and woody, and, added some ylang ylang and rose. So even my floral scent is slightly masculine, Tokyo Blue. But there are a lot of women that, love it. There are a lot of women that love Harlem Nights and Dawn Sauvage. So I make fragrances for everyone, but they're just masculine and, in feel. But, it's the men's fragrance, quote unquote, that women love to steal, right? They love to wear it. They love to wear it for themselves, and it smells different on everyone based on your body chemistry.
Absolutely. 100%. Now, for people listening to this, the collections are pretty well rounded now. Do you have any up and coming projects, anything on the horizon? I know with the whole COVID thing, things kind of halted, but do you have anything in the horizon that's coming?
Yeah, I had a couple of fragrances launching, scheduled to launch this fall. We'll see if, that stays on schedule, but with COVID-19, things have just, you just kind of had to re-strategize, rethink, when you're going to launch. My manufacturers were shut down, my perfume houses were shut down. So we'll see. I've always wanted to develop a beautiful rose scent. And also I'm working on a tea scent as well. So hopefully, you know, fingers crossed, you know, if we can stay on schedule, those will be launched sometime this fall.
Hopefully we can launch them at the Scent Explore 2020 virtual. That'll be a great experience.
Yeah, man. Let's do it.
Really cool.
Let's do it.
When it comes to the creations themselves, how would you
Yes.
separate them from what's in the market today? Like if you had to describe the whole collection, the Chris, you know, the world of Chris Collins experience, maybe like 2 or 3 words to define your fragrance experience that your brand provides.
Well, I'll say elegant, seductive. I try to make fragrances that make you feel seductive and elegant. There are a ton of fragrances on the market. So, in my opinion, the thing that separates one from the other, the story of the fragrance. You know, how many rose scents are there? Hundreds of rose scents, if not thousands. So, you know, it all starts from a story, a connection with people, and then trying to create a rose scent that is unique and not anything that you would smell. You know, when I create fragrances, it's a very thorough process. I start with a story, or there are some times where my perfumers say, Chris, you know what? There's something that I just came across or I've been thinking about, and I want you to try it. So then they'll send it to me, trying to inspire me to match the fragrance to a story. And trust me, I have thousands of stories in my head to tell. But you know, it's all about making a connection with the consumer. You know, if you can connect with the consumer, albeit your story or the fragrance or both, or you as a person, that is the key. You know, because there are a lot of great fragrances out there that don't do well because there's not a great connection, and there's a lot of fragrances that are mediocre, you know, by some. I mean, I'm not here to judge anyone's fragrance, but they do well because it's a great story. There's a great connection. So having that connection is very important.
That's half the battle for sure. And then, like you said, try it on your skin, because there's so many different fragrances of different genres. So just finding that connection and then making sure it works with your body chemistry, which is very
right.
So let's get a little personal, have a little fun here. What is the day like in the life of Chris Collins? Do you have like a regimen? Because I know as a, you know, model, you probably had a very strict regimen, a very strict, you know, diet and you know, just you know, regimen.
Yeah.
You still carry that in your normal day-to-day life these days? You have like a set pattern of things that you like to do?
Well, I would like to, but since launching the brand, a lot of my time goes in running that. So I do try to stay fit. I do try to stay in shape, but it's not as maniacal as it was when I was modeling. I do it for kind of sanity now, you know, just to kind of keep my mind, you know, fresh and my body, you know, fresh. But, you know, most of my day, I'm very hands-on with my brand. I wouldn't say I'm a one-man show, but I basically handle all day-to-day operations with the brand. But, you know, a lot of my day goes into, you know, sometimes shipping orders to, you know, working with the perfumers and then ordering components. And it's all kind of this kind of moving situation that I have every little aspect under control, or at least try to have under control.
Cool. Going back to the model years, you've done it for so many years, 20 plus years. What were like the most important things you learned from that experience? Let's say maybe you want to share 2 or 3 main things that you learned and built your character and made the person you were professionally or as a businessman. Give us some experiences with Ralph Lauren himself and with the brand and being a model, like 3 or 2 major things that happened in your life throughout the whole process.
Well, one of the things that I wanted to do, or that I found myself doing when I was working with Ralph, was observing and seeing exactly how he was doing things with his launches, with his fragrances, with his collections. And, you know, the things that I kind of took away from that, both directly from him and indirectly, just from noticing, was the experience, the kind of exclusivity that he created around his brand, and he created a heritage around his brand. Like you want to, when you create anything, whether it's a fragrance brand or fashion brand or, media company or whatever, you want to think what will be the legacy of the brand? What heritage will this create? And it's hard to know where you'll end up, but you at least need to have an idea of where you want this brand to go. What do you want it to feel like to people 10 years, 20 years, 30 years from now? Because brands like that, like Ralph Lauren, they'll be important in some way, fashion or form, for decades. So you don't want to be, a quick hit, success. You want to make sure your brand has longevity.
Exactly.
And you see the purpose and the goal and where it's going. And that kind of keeps you focused when you're, working on your stuff and you're thinking about new launches and new products, and, that kind of helps you stay the course.
I agree with that 100%. And Ralph Lauren is Americana. I mean, it's such an ingrained part of American culture and history over the last, 30, 40, 50 decades now. My father used to wear the original 1978, the green polo. I used to love that as a kid because it was so powerful.
Isn't that iconic? That's iconic, that bottle.
Trendset.
That scent. And Carlos, did Carlos do that? I met him at Bergdorf and we talked about it.
Carlos,
I mean, Benaim, it is an incredible, incredible fragrance. When I was growing up, my dad, it was very important for him to smell good. And that rubbed off on me. And he wore gray flannel. He wore English leather.
Exactly.
He wore Stetson. I mean, we can look back now and be like, wow. I mean, but those were classic fragrances, That's when there were like maybe 5 fragrances on the market at one time. Now we got 5,000 at one time. But this is where I learned about fragrance, with my dad wearing these fragrances.
Same here. We're only 3 years apart, and I grew up at the same era, the same, decade. And my father was wearing those exact same fragrances at Zara Pour Homme, Paco Rabanne, Polo, all those essential, masculine, just iconic scents. And I think we're lacking some of those scents these days, because I think we changed a little bit of it. And that's the next question I want to fall into it. Two-part question. The first question here is, growing up, what were your fragrances? Like if you look back in childhood, like your first love, the fragrance that you fell in love with, and then maybe as a teenager, the fragrance that was your signature scent, and then as an adult, like a 3-part question. What were the 3 most iconic fragrances that you were growing up, as a kid, as a teenager, as an adult, before you actually came up with your own brand?
Right. So I'm going to tell you, because at one point in time, I was like you. I mean, I had so many fragrances that I was like starting to get confused, because I was like, oh, this is new. I love this. Or let me get this, or, but then when I look back on it, there were 3 fragrances that literally changed the course of my life. One I never wore, but so there's 4. One that I never wore, but that I smelled for the first time on my dad, which is gray flannel. That fragrance, and Tokyo Blue was inspired by gray flannel, by the way.
Wow.
That fragrance, just, whoa. Like, what just happened?
Mind blowing.
And my dad was like, I was all over him when he wore this fragrance. And that was the first time I ever smelled something that just changed everything, the way I thought about life. And then there were 3 that I wore. The first is Obsession for Men. That fragrance was so iconic.
I know.
And it was the first time that I smelled something, I didn't know it then, but I know it now, like musky and oriental. It was in a bottle, and the name, everything about it. I mean, I wore Obsession for Men, for years and years and years and years in my younger years. And then I get to college. I think this was when I was in college. And then Jean-Paul Gaultier comes out.
Le Male.
Wow. I mean, you're talking about me having to like fight off the girls for wearing this. I mean, this fragrance changed everything for me as I was starting to get older and growing older. And then probably the most important fragrances, which led me to where I am now, was Musk Ravageur, Frederic Malle.
Wow, I'm glad to.
So, funny story is, me and one of my best friends would go to Miami, right? We're hanging out, and he has this bottle on the table, and it's almost full. And I'm like, well, what is that? And he says, it's Musk Ravageur from Frederic Malle. Someone gave it to me as a gift. I said, I've never even heard of this person. What is this? And at the time, I didn't even know niche was a category. So this is when it like first launched. So I said, well, do you mind if I wear it? So I wore it and loved it. He said, why don't you keep it? My girlfriend hates it on me.
Wow.
I said, all right. So I wear it. We all hanging out one day, and his girlfriend comes up to me and says, my God, Chris, you smell so good. What is that? So I just walk away because he looked at her like, you hated it on me, but you love it on him. And then that's the kind of the first time I understood like body chemistry and fragrance. But all in all, me wearing that fragrance was how I actually ended up meeting Killian. So that's a kind of an interesting story, because when I ran out, I went to Bergdorf to go and buy it. When I get there, the person that I asked for it, he says, well, they don't sell that here, but you know, we have another brand you should try, and it's called Killian. And I said, well, wow, that sounds great. Let me try it. He said, well, why don't you ask him yourself? Because he's right over there. He was doing an appearance in Bergdorf at the time. Wow. And that was the first time I met Killian. So that fragrance was so important in so many ways, because it led me to then what would be my mentor, and then ultimately launching my own brand.
That's a great story. And it's funny because a lot of the fragrances that you mentioned, I truly love them as well. And Musk Ravageur, it's like a love and hate, because I love it. My wife doesn't like it either. So I
love it.
But it actually, it's one of those fragrances, when you first put it on, it's very polarizing, because you have the cloves, it's a little bit of animalic.
Yep.
But as it gets into the heart and it dried down, the magic begins, man. And it's a beautiful scent. One of the best.
100%. Now that fragrance actually inspired my Harlem Nights. You know, the clove and the musk, ambery. So I use some of the inspiration I have from fragrances that I wore, fragrances that I love, with my own kind of twists and turns, and you know, yeah.
Do you have a favorite from your collection? Like, because you have 7 right now. So do you find yourself, I know they're your babies, you know, everybody says like, how can I choose one? But I mean, do you have 1 or 2 that you have most affinity with, that you would say, okay, this is definitely my favorite, these are my favorites?
Well, it's hard to say which one of my favorites, but there are definitely moments where I connect with one of them at a specific time, and I will keep wearing that. And I guess it will depend on the season or feeling or emotion. But, you know, I love all my children, but you know, I don't know if you have kids or not, but you know that your firstborns are the ones that are like, you have 2 kids. So your firstborns are the ones that are like, you know, it's special because you don't really know how to be a father until you become a father, right?
True.
So my first 3 are really special because I didn't know how to be a designer of fragrance until I just started. And then, I mean, what I learned from then until now is just, you know, exponential. But I'm so proud of those 3 because those are the most difficult. They were the most difficult to create because, you know, I was starting from scratch and, you know, working with the perfumers and say again.
I'm saying blood, sweat, and tears. Those are like your
blood, sweat, and tears. Yeah. And to be completely transparent, in the beginning, I didn't really know where to start. So basically my perfumer said, okay, well, tell us what fragrances you love that you like, and then we'll know where you want to start. So the whole process from launching those first 3 up until now, you know, the whole creative process is completely different. But yeah, like I said, the first 3 children, my first 3 babies, you know, are really special. But I connect with every single one of them because if there wasn't that connection that I had with them, I wouldn't launch them.
I agree. So speaking of connection, so what are, like, if you could tell us maybe your favorite notes, maybe two or three favorite notes that you absolutely love to work with, and your favorite classifications or genres of fragrances.
Well, I love working with musks. I love Oriental fragrances. I do even when I work on, which I will be working on, more citrusy fragrances. There's always like a twist to them. It's not your average citrus. At least I would think that it's not. And I love boozy fragrances. I work with cognac accords. I work with rum. I'm even working on one. I don't want to let the cat out of the bag, but I'm working on another one, which is actually really kind of cool. There's just something about boozy notes that I love. They're hypnotic in a sense. Like Dan Sauvage. Dan Sauvage has like a cognac accord, and I love it. My girlfriend always says, I feel drunk when I wear it. I said, well, that's the point. So I love musky fragrances. I love boozy notes. I actually really love floral notes. I love jasmine. I'm working on a jasmine scent actually for next spring. I love rose. I love florals. But there is a way that you can, make the florals jump. Depending on what you put on the front note, the florals are usually in the heart, and then the base notes. So floral notes and the boozy notes, rum, cognac accord,
Gotcha.
and musk and amber scent.
So the Oriental spicy family. Now, do you have favorite noses in the industry? Maybe like your top two, top three favorite perfumers, not necessarily that you have worked with, but maybe you want to work with in the future?
Well, it's funny because whenever I think about some of the perfumers, it's like people say, well, how do you choose one? And I say, well, they have to, I say it's like a dance, right? So me and a perfumer have to dance very well together because, yeah, we have to, I like to call it a waltz. We waltz together because, we have to, no egos, very honest, very open. And, we work together because we both want to create something very special. So Natalie Festauer did the Dark Romance collection, and she's been incredible. She is so talented, and she's so understanding of what she creates fragrances for me. She says, I see this in the fragrance because I see you this way. So her and I, we dance very well. And then Sidonie Lancaster, amazing perfumer. She's done so many incredible fragrances, and she created a couple for me. So those are the ones that hopefully I'll be launching coming up in fall. And then, I love Jerome Epinette. I love Jerome. Jerome is an incredible perfumer. So yeah, I got my eye out on, a few perfumers. I've even spoken to Carlos. You never know. Maybe one day we could create something incredible. So, but we'll see. We'll see what the future holds.
I'd love to see you working with Cecile Zarokian. She's just an amazing perfumer, and she loves the Oriental spicy genre, which you love. So I can see maybe you guys jiving and working together in the future as well.
Yeah, I met Cecile. She, I met her at the Jovois event in Paris right before everything kind of shut down. And we were supposed to meet up before I left Paris. But, we weren't able to. But I could see me also working with her because we're definitely in contact a lot.
That's cool. So besides your own brand, Chris Collins, World of Chris Collins, what were your favorite, or do you have other favorite brands, maybe like top 5 all-time favorite brands?
In fragrance, right? I've always, Frederic Malle obviously was the first niche brand I kind of fell in love with. Kilian, incredible brand. I've always kept my eye on like what Tom Ford was doing. Tom Ford, great job in fragrance, great stories. I like the fragrance brands that tell great stories. this is in no way, fashion, or form a knock to um, brands that launch fragrances that are note titles. But to me, you know, Down Sauvage, Straight to Heaven, Musk Ravageur, those are the scents that capture you and you try to understand and feel the story. So, you know, I have those three for sure, and I'm sure there's some other ones that I pretty much that I can't think of right now. But those three are the ones that, you know, inspire me and push me, because, you know, that's the pinnacle of perfume in a sense.
I
I'm
agree.
sure there's some other ones, but you know, when I think of that, for me, you know, it's like being a basketball player and saying LeBron is the pinnacle, so I want to be as great as him. Those three for me are the pinnacle.
I agree. These are incredible brands. There's no two ways about it. Now, these are going to be sort of very thoughtful questions here. Number one, how do you feel about reformulations in today's market? You know, just weaker juices, if you will. The community seem to really not like that, and we're seeing a lot of that,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to flavors. And what do you feel about flankers? And do you see yourself ever getting into the flankers, like a flanker of Taboo, a flanker of whatever fragrance you already have? Do you ever see yourself doing stuff like that?
So it's a two-part question, right? The reformulation. So you mean having a fragrance that's already launched and you reformulate it to be weaker?
Exactly. So, for example, people get used to Musk Ravageur that was released in the year 2000. Then, you know, a few years
And they have to yeah.
sometimes it
Yeah.
reformulates because ingredients can't be found, so they claim, or
Yeah.
brand gets bought out by a bigger company, Lauder or L'Oreal, whatever, and they restructure the brand. And then sometimes they restructure the juice for whatever the case may be, and people hate that. And normally, 90% of the time, when there's a repackaging, that happens. And that's been a commonality in the fragrance industry. So, what are your thoughts about reformulation in general, of course? And then, what do you think
Mm-hmm.
flankers? Do you think they're just redundantly overly done? And do you see yourself ever getting into the flank
Mm-hmm.
as well?
I love the flankers, first off, you know, but it has to be unique, you know, because there's something about having that juice in something. Because I mean, you're a collector, I'm a collector, we're both enthusiasts, we just express in our own unique way our love for perfume. So there's something about the flankers that just, you know, I can definitely see myself doing it, but it would have to be unique, you know, it have to be something that's special, you know, because if you just throw it in a bottle and say, here you go, that's not going to work. So that has to be well thought out, and done well in order for people to kind of resonate with it and, you know, and to purchase that from your brand. But reformulation. So we have IFRA, right? And IFRA, every single year, they change what's supposed to be legal or illegal to put in perfume. I myself have never reformulated any of my perfumes. And again, I have the luxury of being a 100% owner of my perfume. So I launch whatever I want, when I want, how I want. I'm sure there's some other perfumers who have bosses and they say, well, you know, we can't do that because it's too expensive, or they actually just move the perfume out of the collection, which, you know, a lot of people don't really understand. And then the marketing reason is something that's, I don't know what they say, it's we ran out of material or something. So listen, if you had to reformulate because in 1998 your materials or something that you had in it was, you know, correct, and then 10 years later you had to reformulate because you couldn't use it anymore, that you cannot control. But if you're reformulating because it just didn't sell well, I don't think that is, in my opinion, the route that I would go. I would just discontinue it and then move on, because I have so many other fragrances and stories that I like to tell. So far, so good. Knock on wood, I haven't had to do that. But instead of reformulating, I'll probably move on from it.
Got you. Yeah, that would be smarter thing to do because, like I said, you know, sometimes reformulations become so powerful that you can't even recognize the scent anymore. It becomes like a whole different watered down version of a scent. You know, going back to the iconic stuff that
is there a fragrance that you know of that for certain did that changed? Because
oh yeah,
I
many
don't really.
reviewer, you know, I see it over and over again. Musk Ravager being one of them because we both love it. And
Yes.
when you look at the original formulation, which I have two bottles here, I have a 2015 version and I have a 2000 version of the very first, you know, you can compare. The color of the juice was darker. It was extremely more powerful. So yeah, I mean, you can, which is sad, you know, but it's still,
I haven't smelled the new one, but that's a shame.
it's still a good juice, but it's just not as pungent as it was originally made. It
the original, yeah.
So we're coming at the tail end here of the podcast, and I wanted to do something really fun here, which is called the rapid fire. Which basically it's going to be a succession of questions, and you can just answer them with the first thought that comes to your mind. This is an opportunity for folks to get to know you a little bit more. So let's start with describe Chris Collins, the person, the man, in 3 words or less.
Humble, emotional, mysterious.
Nice, nice. Favorite color?
Dark gray.
Nice.
I might as well say black. Yeah, dark gray, black.
One of my favorite colors. I like black and red, so love it, love it. A favorite place? Like one place. Santorini, Greece. Beautiful.
Yep.
Beautiful. Music choice?
Jazz.
Nice, nice. A favorite dish or food?
Ooh. Oh, this is tough. I'll bet you that gets so many people. I don't know. Pad Thai. I love Asian food. Yeah.
Nice. A drink of choice?
Mezcal.
A hobby besides fragrance? You know, do you have a hobby? Do you still play basketball? Like a hobby that makes you happy, that brings joy into your life?
Gardening.
Oh, very nice. What turns you off? Do you have like a pet peeve, like a major pet peeve, something that you can't stand?
Small talk.
Got you.
No, well, we talked about it earlier. As a Scorpio, we like right to it.
Right to it. Yes, I'm very much like that. If you weren't a perfumer, what would you have been professionally? Perhaps a doctor, as you mentioned earlier?
Doctor.
Okay.
Yep.
If you could have one superpower, what would that power be? What would you choose to be your superpower?
Flight.
Nice. If you were an animal, what animal would you be? And what is the animal that you have most affinity with? You can answer either one.
If I was an animal, separately. If I was an animal, I'd be a tiger. And the animal I have most affinity with are dogs. I love dogs.
Very loyal. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So in closing, what would you like to let people know what you have going on in your life? New projects, new launches, anything you want to share with fragrance enthusiasts in the world. This is your time.
Well, given the current condition of what's happening with the racial tension and COVID-19, I'm in the process of launching an initiative called Love, Compassion, Empathy Movement, the Love, Compassion, Empathy Movement, because I think that's what we all need to share, to give, to have love, compassion, and empathy. And every perfume, everything I do comes from that place. So I hope when people wear my fragrances, they feel that and they understand that. But it's the most incredible feeling to be able to create something that other people have an affinity to. And that's what keeps me motivated. And I am really blessed to be in this position. And I don't want people to think that I take any of it for granted, because I work my butt off to do more and be more. So this is, my happy place in making perfume, and I hope people try them and love them.
Thanks for sharing that. That's a great story, and your initiative is amazing. And thanks for sharing that here as well. And you were absolutely correct, Chris. It's all about sharing, bringing people up, uniting, and the world needs that more than ever. And we hope that we can bring joy through this podcast, through your fragrances, into the world a little bit more and getting people a little bit closer to each other. So with that, thank you so much, everyone, for turning into the Max Forti Chat here on the podcast, Spotify, and other podcast carriers. And we're going to see you again real soon. And again, Chris Collins, thanks so much for being here. Wish you all the best. Stay safe. And I know we're going to cross paths again very soon.
We definitely will. Thanks, Max. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure.